So yeah. So if someone wanted to get started with AWS, let's say I'm a guy, and I want to try this AWS cloud stuff. How would I get? So what do I do to get started, and how much is it going to cost me to get started?
Well, maybe we should ask the poll.
Oh, that's a great one. Let's go to the poll. Yeah.
The poll is basically asking, Steph could launch that, how much experience people have with AWS and whether or not they've used it before.
So we'll get Stephanie to. Stephanie, can you launch the poll?
But meanwhile, while that's going on, so yeah, Claude, you've got a good. I mean, there's a free trial. There's a tier, isn't there, in AWS, and it's quite generous.
Yes. So when you sign up the first time with an email address to Amazon Web Services, you get basically 1 year. You're eligible for the free tier service, and they describe for every single service they offer what is eligible for free tier. So, for example, in EC2, you can launch 1 microserver a month, basically, and you don't pay for it. And for others, other service, you might have so many requests, so much data, and so on and so on. So for prototyping, that's actually most of the time good enough. If you just want to play around and learn, that's more than enough. It's a bit tricky though, because sometimes you accidentally launch resources which might cost. So it's a good advice, I think, to use their billing alert and set it up right away, so you can basically set up an alert whenever your bill is higher than whatever your
$1.
$1.
Yeah.
Okay. And with this free tier, you're allowed to do anything. So you could even set up let's say someone has an idea, they want to test it out, they want to create a public web service. And they could do all of this through this free tier.
Yeah, but there are limits everywhere. So you might for example, if this takes off and you have to launch more servers, obviously you pay for the new servers or for the web traffic. You might pay for the web traffic. But if it's really just a small project, then you're good for a year. And after that, if you're so if you really have a startup idea based on AWS, you can apply for AWS Activate, I think it's called. It's kind of a startup program where they give up credits. I never applied myself, but I heard they're very generous. Basically, if you really submit your idea, then they like it and they give you credit for so long. It's kind of their way of investing.
Okay. So one of the new things we're hearing a lot about in the industry is Internet of Things.
Right.
And so let's say I have this idea. I want to create this data moving service, maybe for, and I'm sure there's some companies that would be interested in that, to consume Internet of Things. So does Amazon do anything for me to help me with that?
Right. Yeah. So they just announced this. Is it in beta or preview? I think it's in preview. So basically, imagine this. So you're basically building some kind of device. You've gone out there and you've got this device. It's like an Arduino or something like that.
Or Intel even.
Yeah, Intel, right? Or I think Cisco do them as well. And it's collecting all this data. But how do you get the data from the device back to to your infrastructure? You're going to need to write some code on the device or some kind of tool to get the data from that. So what iOS does, this new service that Amazon have launched, it's called, I think it's just IoT, isn't it? IoT AWS service. Yeah. They've essentially created an SDK that lets you very easily take data from these devices, I don't know what you call them, but from these devices and pump them into the Amazon world. Yeah. And then what they've done on the Amazon side is basically created a fault-tolerant infrastructure around the incoming data, so nothing's lost. Right. So you can take this data coming in from all of these sensors and devices and essentially pump it to S3, DynamoDB, or Redshift. Okay. And so we can already read from S3 or Dynamo. So it's really powerful. We haven't really played with it yet too much, have we? But it's a good. I think it's a good plan, a good platform.
Yeah. So I think I'll talk just briefly about the poll since the poll was closed. Thank you for answering. So just so the audience knows about each other, I guess. So 46% have used AWS. 13% sort of. So they've experimented. Maybe they've used the free tier, and then 42% have not, but they plan to. So that's it's exciting. Yeah, it really is an exciting area. And once you once you get into the cloud, it's really you really start to understand and see the amazing benefits for that. So when we talk, one of the things that you mentioned, Stuart, was about the cloud was scalability.
Right.
So when we switch gears a little bit and we ask about FME Cloud,
right.
what do we do for scalability on FME Cloud right now?
Right. So I mean, for the thing is with Amazon is it's very, very easy to basically switch hardware out. Yeah. So say you're on a micro instance, a really small instance, yeah. and the load spikes, you can essentially go to the dashboard in Amazon and you can say, okay, this is my hard disk, this is my image, this is my machine, but I want more power, I want a bigger machine basically. And you just do that on the Amazon dashboard, and it takes a couple of a minute or something.
Well, stopping is the longest and starting.
Right, so you stop the instance, restart, and then you have more capacity.
Right.
So that's what you can do with FME Cloud.
And how long does that take?
It's about a minute, 2 minutes to basically switch machine sizes from something really small with, say, 1 core, 4 gig of RAM, all the way up to, 16 cores, 60 gig of RAM, something on cloud. So you can scale really, really easily, and via an API even as well.
Okay. And am I able to go scale back down? Like, let's say I'm an organization and I know I have a big peak, so I scale up, I handle it, but now I want to go back down because obviously I can save money that way.
Right, yes, it's it's exactly the same to go back down.
Okay, so a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. And now is that done automatically at this point?
No, you have to do that. So you have to keep that off. I mean, maybe one day the dream is to kind of have a more elastic scaling model where things can scale as demand comes in.
Okay, so talk about that. What's the future scaling of FME Cloud, and what services would we use to do that?
Okay, yeah. So the future will be, I guess, with FME Cloud, the entity that does work, that does the data integration workflows, is called an engine.
Yeah.
So really, it's the engine you need to scale.
Yeah.
The core and the database and those things, handling the traffic, we could scale that, but let's not worry about that now.
Yeah.
What we essentially need to do is scale out these engines.
Yes.
So the idea is we'll have kind of like a sea of engines out there that can be assigned dynamically. Maybe we could look at load on an SQS queue coming in, or I don't know, database load or whatever to trigger engines being assigned to you on demand essentially. Yeah. It's almost like engines as a compute service. Yeah. So pay for what you need.
Pay for what you need. Right.
Maybe one day we need We need to get Docker going, right?
Yeah,
that's another piece of technology.
Yeah, more other discussion there. Yeah.
But yeah, Lambda, SQS, S3, EC2.
Yeah.
There are core services, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. So open data is a big thing we hear about. If I'm a small city or a company who, maybe I'm a hydro company and I want to have outage maps or something for anything for the public to consume, and I could do this using my own infrastructure, but if I was interested in using AWS, what are some of the services I would do, and what would the cost-ish be? Do we have any experience with that?
So it depends a lot what website do you want. If it's just a simple static web page and you want to be sure that it's up all the time, so in case your main web page is down, just your emergency, then you could put it, for example, on S3 and use CloudFront on top of that. That is very simple and very cheap, so you pretty much pay just for the storage and the network traffic, no servers running, but it needs to be designed in a certain way.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about S3? What is S3? Because you talk about S3 as a storage, and now you're talking about using S3 as a web server for serving static web pages.
Yeah, so it's ultimately a storage, but they added this neat feature that you basically can turn your storage into a web page, so it gets a different URL. It reacts like a web server, and you can. It's a static website, pretty much.
So if I gave you an HTML link, and it was on S3, the user wouldn't be able. It would just so the user experience would just be I'm on a web server.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And you can obviously put it behind your own DNS link, so the user will know.
Yeah, and that's how we distribute FME.
The playground,
Yeah, the playground, and also new installs of FME. At one point, they were on our server in-house. Well, not in-house, but on our physical infrastructure that we maintain. Then we had a big release, and the server was hit so hard it went down. So now we put it on S3,
right.
and we never have to worry about the load. So that's a real simple use of.
Should we? I think we've warmed everyone up a little bit now. Should we cut to some questions that people are asking?
Yeah, let's do that.
And actually, we haven't really even mentioned, but yeah, this is an interactive session. So on the right, it'll say, I think it says, does it say questions? You can expand that. Yeah. And if you ask questions, then we're gonna answer those as we go through.
Yeah. And we've been working through some of the ones that came in early. So
right.
But yeah, so why? Okay, so there's a question here from Eugene. And it says, why AWS and not others?
Right. So there are others. I mean, there's Azure platform.
That's right. There's IBM.
There's IBM.
There's DigitalOcean.
Right.
Yeah.
Google Compute. And I think they all do serve, especially DigitalOcean and Rackspace and some of the smaller ones. They serve a certain purpose. Yeah. And they're not really even competing with Amazon, to be honest.
Yeah.
But Amazon is just. I mean, I think they're a long way ahead. I mean, if you look at Gartner, talking about the broadest range of services, they have the most data centers. They have the most not only regions but actually data centers within regions as well, so you can build fault-tolerant workflows. But it's really the capabilities for me. They've got a huge amount of capability.
Yeah. So when somebody thinks about AWS, it's much more than just they've given you disk and compute engines to play with, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. These 40 services. There's the machine learning service. There's all sorts of things.
As far as database, obviously one part of FME Cloud and FME is the database. So what services do we leverage on Amazon for data storage?
So for our web app, so the FME Cloud Console, the API, we're using RDS. So that's the managed database from Amazon Web Services. It's pretty much basically a pre-installed database on EC2, but it's fully managed. So it's super easy to launch a database which is already fault-tolerant. So it launches two servers, and it automatically takes over if your primary server goes down. So we don't have to worry about that. And you can also add read replicas if you would like to. And I think they currently support five database types. So they have PostgreSQL, that's what we're using mainly. Then they have SQL Server, they have Oracle. Then they have their new Aurora and brand new what is it called? The MySQL branch of
MariaDB.
Yeah.
Now, which one of those have location? SQL Server.
Postgres does, because we run it as PostGIS.
Yeah, that's right. PostGIS, SQL Server. MySQL does, I think, but it's limited.
Aurora, you can store spatial in it, but it doesn't have a spatial index. So it supports a spatial column, but doesn't have. And it's even without the spatial index, it's fast. So, but of course, we do hope that at some point they put a spatial index on it, because then it would be scary fast. Although, if I'm just starting out, which one should I use? Should I just go for Aurora?
No, Aurora is like. You have to launch quite big servers.
Okay. So it's expensive.
To start with. So that's only basically if you plan on using Aurora at some point, you're better off starting with MySQL. Just use a small server, and then you can just switch it, because Aurora is the same interface as MySQL.
Okay, great. So we have another question here, and this one's from Apollinaire. I apologize if I didn't get your name right. And the question is, what would be the cost for academic institutions or students to use FME Cloud, FME Server in the Cloud?
Right. So I think basically, I mean, the FME Cloud comes with $250 credit, so they could use that.
Yeah.
But if they wanted to go their own way,
Yeah.
I believe there's a license for FME Server, an academic license that
Yeah.
they can leverage. That's, I think, free, is it?
Yeah. So they would have to pay their own EC2 costs. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So they pay their own EC2 costs, and so I think an instance big enough to run FME Cloud on, FME Server on costs about what would it be? M1, I think it's about $400 a month.
Okay, that's full time.
Yeah, full time.
Now FME Cloud, for how much is the low end version?
95 cents an hour.
Okay.
And you can pause it.
Okay.
So you only pay for what you use, as
Right,
with most things in the cloud.
Right.
So if you only want to use it 5 hours a month or during teaching time or something, you can just pause it and pay for those hours.
Could I schedule it?
You can in about, I'll say, 2 weeks.
Oh, that's optimistic.
Okay.
By Christmas.
It's coming up.
It's my Christmas present. I think Todd said if I got up on Christmas morning and logged on, it would be there. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this will let you schedule instance uptime on FME Cloud. So you're going to be able to say, hey, I want my FME server to run every Tuesday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Yeah. And
this schedule will run and it'll bring your server up and it'll shut it down automatically every Tuesday.
Yeah. And yet another way to save money, really.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So that's a good question.
It is a good question. So now if I have $250 and I fire up an instance and my $250 runs out, what's going to happen, Claude?
Well, there are different scenarios. So in the scenario, you don't read your emails and you're not really interested anymore in your instance. It just stops.
Okay, so you wouldn't get a nasty bill surprise.
No.
Okay. Good. So let's see. Let's see what other questions we got here.
I think I'd like to talk about decoupling workflows and how to kind of...
Yeah, and what services do you use to do that?
You're going to use SQS. So the main thing here is when you're architecting in Amazon, you don't want to really send messages direct between services. So even if you're talking up to the cloud, let's say you have an on-premises application and you want to send a message to something to kick something off.
Yeah.
You don't want to send directly to FB Server or directly to RDS. What it's better to do is to send a message to SQS. So SQS is meant to be highly fault tolerant. It's one of the most fault tolerant service, and it's quite simple really. It's just a queue.
Yeah.
But what it means by putting the data up there and decoupling the components is it increases stability.
Yeah.
Because you can send a message to SQS, you're almost guaranteed the SQS queue's there, and then the other application can pull from the SQS queue when it needs to. And the other really nice thing is this application that's pulling from the SQS queue, it's going to run the job or do some work. It doesn't have to be FME Server or anything. And if it fails, you can configure the job to go back in, the message to go back in.
It'll reappear in the queue.
Right, yeah.
So that's great if you have to restart components as well. Then you don't have to worry that when you're in that restart, you're losing jobs. So
So I would like to add here. So we're not using only SQS. We're using SNS, which is their notification service, together with SQS. So the advantage of sending a message to SNS instead of to SQS is, like, in case you hit, for example, the main reason we use SQS is because we have a very small infrastructure. So we don't have a lot of overlap in the backend servers.
Right.
So there is a chance that we have a short glitch where we're not live.
Right.
So that said, we would lose messages if we would use a webhook instead of a queue.
Right.
But if you use SNS,
what's SNS?
So it's pretty much a webhook, I would say. So you just publish a message to this service, and then you configure behind the service what with this message happened. So in our case, we're sending the message to the queue to SQS and store it there. But you could also redirect it to a webhook, so it would be pushed to our web service. So that would be way more performant. Not way more, but it will be more performant. And you can also send an email, for example, or a text message or whatever.
So it also sounds like with SNS, I can have a one-to-many broadcast. So I can send one thing and I can have many people, whereas SQS, only one thing can pull it from the queue and get the job. And so is that fair to say?
I think so, yeah. And
okay.
It's good going forward because if you don't want to switch SQS out, it's much easier because you already have the SNS endpoint, so you can just reconfigure it.
Okay, so we have a good question here from Courtney. And she says, is there or will there be a way to have your FME Cloud instance automatically pause at the completion of an FME server job?
Yeah, there will actually. I mean, we have an API with FME Cloud that lets you start and pause instances. So what you could do is use a new scheduler, bring up your FME Cloud instance, do some work. Maybe sometimes the job takes 12 hours, other times 3 hours, and then you can essentially use a webhook on FME server that says, when this job's done, call this other thing. So we could call the FME Cloud API and say, shut the machine down.
So do we have any, like if I'm using, let's say I'm using FME Workbench, is there any way to, within FME Workbench, is there any custom transformers or anything that we've been built?
Yeah, so good point. So there's two ways you could do it. The easiest way would be to go to the FME store in Workbench, and you just type actually. Yeah. And if you type FME Cloud, there's a whole bunch of FME Cloud transformers, I think. Instance manager, pause instance, delete. There's loads of things you can do. So there's one in there for pausing, so you can just do that. Or if you're really confident, you could use the HTTP call, which has made big improvements for interacting with web services.
So that would be kind of weird in some sense, right? You have a job running, and at the very last thing that job does is pause the machine that it's running on.
Right.
But it all works.
You can't really get much more efficient than that.
No. And you better be sure nobody else is using that instance.
That's true.
So one thing to mention here is, if you launch an instance, from the first minute you pay for an hour.
Right.
So once you launch if you have let's say a 5-minute job, then the next hour you have again a 5-minute job. You pay for 2 hours.
Right.
So it might be worth it to kind of
try to batch them up.
Yeah, batch them up, and make sure you maybe pause the server at 55.
Right.
So that you don't hit the next hour already. And the reason we do that is Amazon does the same.
Okay.
So we just copied basically.
We're tied to that.
So whenever you launch, that's good to know as well for EC2. So whenever you launch a server, you pay for the full hour right away. So they encourage to basically once you launch a server, use it for 55 minutes and pause it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a good tie-in. There's another so we've talked about EC2 a lot.
Yeah.
And that's a compute service where Claude just mentioned we pay by the hour. Are there other sort of compute services at Amazon where maybe you don't pay by the hour that maybe have a different? So go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, I think for me this is one of the kind of biggest game changers in the last few years that Amazon have brought out. There's a new service called Lambda.
Okay.
And so think of it like this: if you wanted to execute some code or run a workflow anywhere on premises in the cloud, you need some kind of web server. To interact with another service, and then you need to manage that web server, and then you need to patch it and secure it, and then you need to write your code. So what Lambda does is, instead of doing all that, you just write your code.
Okay.
So you essentially go in and there's a nice text editor, and you can start writing. Is it JavaScript, Python they just added?
Yeah, Node. So Node,
Java. Python and Java. So quite the range of languages. And you can basically access all of the Amazon SDKs. It's all preloaded, so you can interact with all of the SDKs from in this code. But you can write any code you want. So you can start building back-end services, maybe to handle incoming data from some kind of GPS tracking device or something like that, without writing any code.
Okay.
And you pay per transaction.
I think it's 100 milliseconds, is it, or something crazy?
Oh yeah, that's right. I think it's time, isn't it? But the first million,
it's
free.
Yeah, it's crazy cheap.
It's incredible. I guess they're going for the big fish.
Yeah. So have we ever used this, or is this just something?
Yeah. So one scenario where we use it is what we do is we want to do on-demand data processing. So on S3, so the data storage service, you can configure a bucket. So when data goes into a bucket, it sends.
A bucket.
So a bucket is like a folder.
On
S3.
Okay, so the data arrives in S3
into a folder. You can tell the folder to send a message to SQS.
Okay.
And say, here's some data. Message goes to SQS. And you can also tell it to send a message to Lambda.
Okay.
So you could just send the message straight to SQS, and then FME Cloud could pull the message from SQS, run the job, process the data.
Yeah.
Or you could send the message to Lambda. So what we do is we send the message to Lambda, then we run some code, and what the code does is it says, okay, I've got some data coming in. Is my FME Cloud instance running?
Oh, okay.
If the FME Cloud instance isn't running, then I'm going to launch the FME Cloud instance using the API.
Right.
And then the API, the FME Cloud instance comes online, and it's told to pre-program to go to the SQS queue, pull the message down, start processing.
And if more data arrives while that instance is running, this could just go back to Claude's thing. We could leave it running for an hour.
Yeah.
So if more data arrives within that hour, when it triggers the Lambda, it would say, hey, I already have an instance running, and then just ship it across. So this must be useful when instances where data comes in bunches, maybe, or
exactly, yeah. You can batch data, but I think we're almost underusing it, to be honest, because I know some startups build their entire business logic on Lambda, like hundreds of functions.
Yeah, and scalability. Do you have to?
That's the key thing, right? If you're a startup, or even you're just someone who's designing and you're not sure of load, you don't worry about it at all.
It's your credit card.
It's your credit card is the load.
Right. So now I don't even have to worry about starting with a small EC2 instance or a large one. I just if I never get a request, then I'm never going to pay anything because I never did anything.
Yeah.
And if it takes off, and then hey, hopefully you have customers who are paying for your service on the other end.
Exactly. And Claude knows the pain of deploying big web stacks.
So why didn't we leverage Lambda right from the start? Like when we were doing FME Cloud, why didn't we just leverage? Did we just miss it, or?
Right. So I mean, I guess there is certain components missing on this. So
it didn't exist.
Yeah, well that's true.
Okay, well, there you go.
It is easy. It just didn't exist.
Well, there you go. So Amazon's adding new services all the time.
Yeah, Lambda is fairly new actually. There's still like
a year or so.
I think they announced the reInvent last year.
Yeah.
So but then it was in preview for a long time. So it just this spring.
And really, to take it to it's kind of to really bring it to the end, what you need to pair it with is the API gateway.
Yeah.
Because all public services that you want to create, create a nice API for people to interact with them.
Yeah.
And that's what we have with FME Cloud.
Yeah.
And so the API gateway is a new service from Amazon that lets you design an API in the GUI.
On top of anything?
On top of anything, and then you can basically hook it into Lambda.
Wow.
So you design your REST call, you say I want it to be a get, I want this to be the URL, and then you say I'm going to connect it to this Lambda function. Or you could even connect it direct to FME Cloud
or
whatever you want.
So it's a full-blown REST web service by the time you're done.
Exactly, yeah.
And what's the cost of that?
That is free because they want to use Lambda.
So hard. Okay. Okay. That's a good price. So, are there any new services that you know about that you're excited about, but are waiting on for FME Cloud?
Yeah, so we're waiting for the EFS, the Elastic File System, which is pretty much an fast drive, but it's automatically so you pay only for the storage you use, and it's automatically scaling up, so you can basically have unlimited storage, and it uses the NFS protocol.
And how many clients could you have connected to this NFS?
I don't know enough, I would say, but for us, a couple thousand.
Oh, couple thousand. Okay, so it's measured in thousands then,
I think so, yeah. Okay. So it's basically, normally if Amazon designs something, they design it big.
Yeah.
So
No, good. Okay, any other questions here?
And there's the data inspector. Is it called data inspector?
Yeah, Amazon AWS inspector.
That's a little bit hardcore, isn't it? But it's essentially a security tool. Once again, more security-specific features for the enterprise, and it's going to let you scan continually servers for vulnerabilities. So that could be interesting for us.
Yeah, one thing I would like to mention also about all those new services. So if you're new to Amazon Web Service, it might be a bit overwhelming because you have to deal with the whole permission model of that.
Sure.
So those services tie into so many so many other services that you have to. There are a lot of terms coming up, and you might not know. So that might be the first couple hours might be a bit confusing. This was my experience was generally with Amazon Web Service, but there are so many good blogs out there, and Stack Overflow is full of Amazon Web Service questions, and so on and so on. So
do you have a favorite blog on AWS?
Well, I'm following the official blog
okay.
for new announcement. And like also for like use cases, it's pretty nice. Like we have a couple things implemented where they just announced in their blog.
We've got loads of blogs, haven't we? Technical blogs.
Netflix. And Netflix has a good one. Those guys are. I mean, when you think about Netflix running on AWS, I mean that's and the data bandwidth that they're using, right? It's
like half the
scalability.
I recently read they will have like 10,000 instances not used to certain times, 10,000 servers just idling, so they have an internal spot market, something like that.
Interesting, yeah. So Claude, what would be, if somebody's working with AWS, what would be some of your top tips?
Yeah, so I guess first of all, don't use your root account. So
security is number one. Pay attention to security.
Pay attention to security, very important. So Amazon has this thing called IAM, which is like the permission management. So basically, when you create an account, you sign in with your email address and your password. Then best practice activate immediately two-factor authentication. It's your credit card behind there. And then you can create users which generate a so-called AWS key and AWS C, ultimately a username password, which is you can just throw away if you need to. And you can assign permissions to every user. So best practice is to assign just the minimum permission for what you want to do to this user, but that can be very tricky. So there it's a bit fiddling around normally, but it's worth it. And also, if you ever check in, for example, your keys to GitHub to a public repository, immediately withdraw it because, or if it was ever public, it's very important. Immediately withdraw the key because there are like literally miners like just looking for keys in the internet, and as soon they have the key, they will launch Amazon EC2 instance in your account. So there are like several horror stories about that people woke up with a couple $1,000s of bills after one night. But it's easy avoidable if you're just careful and follow best practice of security.
So let's say I'm watching right now and then I realize that I've probably been a little bit lax. We won't mention any names. I've been a little bit lax with key and secret key, so I should immediately just cancel the other ones. And then my existing ones, and I can easily regenerate.
Yes, exactly.
And then also turn on two-factor authentication. Yes. Okay. So anything else? Like, if you were to start again today, what would be another top thing you want to design for?
Well, if you design, I expect the unexpected.
Okay.
Kind of. Like so many times I thought that it's not in their document. That's not going to happen. This is going to work. But then exactly this case, so you're doing things so often. There's at least one time it happens that this completely unexpected behavior of Amazon, of your code, or whatever.
Has any service not failed for you at one point or another, at some point in your 3 years since you've been working on this?
I guess so, but I couldn't name one.
Okay. So really, any service, even SQ, you mentioned earlier that even SQS went down. I mean, it's very rare, but because it's the sort of the fundamental building block. But
it does. I mean, there's network issues as well. That's
that's right. It's just And whole regions, do whole regions go down?
That's very rare.
Very rare. Okay.
Yeah, a region is comprised of more than one data center.
Okay, so a region isn't one data center.
Right, and that separates Amazon from other providers.
Okay.
And so they're geographically separated.
Yeah.
And so I think the worst one ever was when the eastern seaboard, there was a hurricane.
Yeah.
And the power went out.
Yeah.
And one of the data centers went out, but I think the other one was still working, right? It was just one of the data centers. So that's the beauty of Amazon.
Yeah.
Try doing that on premises.
Yeah, exactly. So design for failure, security, those are the big things. Okay.
I think I would say as well, things change so quickly. So, subscribe to the blogs, try and set some time. I always try and set, an hour every month or something just to follow what's happening.
Yeah.
Because it changes so fast.
Yeah.
And you can save so much time by leveraging the new services.
Yeah.
So just try and put some time aside just to keep up to speed. It's really insane how fast it moves.
Yeah.
Also, I go back to why AWS and not others. Like, it doesn't hurt to keep an eye on other services. So there are a lot of things AWS offers, but there might be a better web service, like a web service which fits your need better.
Yeah.
Also, like it's just good to keep on top of other cloud providers too, because it's like at the moment I would say Amazon is really in the lead.
Yeah.
There is nothing else like that.
Yeah.
But this can change very quickly.
That's right. So what's our strategy at SAFE? I mean, right now we have the FME Cloud stack, and then we have which launches these FME server instances. Is there any sort of, if we peer down the road 5 years, is there any, do you see that changing where, maybe only the FME server instances are somewhere else, or?
Well, Docker is a huge thing. So if we ever manage to move to Docker with FME Cloud, then we have more flexibility. But that's a bit the problem. And once you're in the universe, it's kind of hard to get out because it's convenient to stay in there. But there is always just when the cons.
And it's like Stuart said earlier too, they give you more than just raw hardware and storage. So these services are seductive, right? You use them. Like if you built your whole stack on Lambda, let's say we didn't do this, but let's say somebody built their whole stack on Lambda, and now they want to move to another cloud provider. They're just not. It's just not going to happen. They'd have to rewrite the whole stack. Yeah.
The thing is, it has consumed us. I mean, but at the end of the day, the bill is still pretty reasonable.
Yeah,
really,
absolutely.
in terms of that, what you're getting is good value. So I think that's why people are just the snowball's starting to roll now, right?
Yeah, and just a little bit more information on what Claude talked about. At SAFE, we do have Docker's this virtualization technology, and at SAFE we do have a project that Claude's one of our Docker experts, but there's some other folks working on Docker as well. And the goal there is to put FME server inside a variety of Docker containers, and once they're inside Docker containers, we can run them on any Linux, and soon on Windows, because with Windows 2016 server, they support running Windows instances inside these containers.
Right.
And where we want to get to with Cloud is that Cloud will talk just via APIs, and Claude's been a real champion on this of just really building lists for the server guys. I only want to talk to APIs. I only want to talk to APIs. I don't want to be doing anything else. And the benefit of that is then Claude doesn't really understand or even know. You need to know what's on the other side of that interface, and then the goal is we would be able to launch using Docker machine, launch these things anywhere, and the launching stack can stay on AWS. There's no reason to move that really, because at the end of the day, the people, if they do want to run on Azure or they do want to run anywhere else, are really only talking about their FME server instance. But that's as Claude mentioned, that's a non-trivial amount of work, but it is something that we at SAFE are working towards because we've always been platform agnostic.
We know Amazon's not going to be here in 30 years.
Or it could, there's always. You just look at what the Microsoft used to dominate the world, and now not so much. But now they got a new CEO. Maybe they'll who's really, and he seems to have great vision on many things. He's definitely a technology guy. Who I'm pretty sure that they wouldn't have bought Minecraft if Ballmer was the CEO.
Right.
But they did 8 months after he took over. So it's pretty exciting. But the main thing is we want to. Okay, so we have another question here. Does Claude have a short blog on master key versus user key setup? I'm still getting my head around the S3 integration, and that would be great.
Oh, all right. I guess we can work on that.
Yeah, so this is from Steve Cyphers. I would just, so send us an email for sure, and we can point you to things, but I think that would be great. I mean, Amazon has lots of information on IAM, but we could focus just on maybe a little part of that and write about kind of best practices or practices we use on that. So, and then Mark Van Ness has another question. User management, how are you doing these?
Okay, so within AWS, I guess.
Or even in FME Cloud, like let's say I'm an organization and I have 50 people.
Right.
How do we do anything, or is it just like, hey, 50 people sign up, give us 50 credit cards, and?
No, in FME Cloud you can sign up and there's account management, and so you can add team members, and then you can set roles on those team members.
So then one person from an organization would sign up?
He'd be the owner.
Okay.
And he can add basically members who can't access the billing, they can't access the account configuration. They can just launch instances.
Okay.
And then on the AWS side, well, the service is called IAM, which is what's that stand for? Identity Access Management. So that is very, very, very powerful. Basically, you build up a security model using JSON files. You can do it using the GUI, but every single service you can attach a JSON file to that links to the IAM to define all the permissions, and it is complicated.
So basically, they allow you to allow or withdraw access to every single API call. It goes down to their raw API.
Oh, okay.
So then, if you use an SDK, one call might use like 3 different API calls.
I see.
And you can also limit the API calls to resources.
Yes.
But then for different services, the syntax might be slightly different.
Yeah.
You can add conditional requirements which have to be met, like tags or whatever. So there's like unlimited possibilities kind of, but also it's unlimited complications.
Yeah. So it's as powerful as you want, but with great power comes great cost, or you have to manage it.
They have a GUI though, don't they, where you can generate what do they call them? Templates.
Yeah.
Permission templates.
Okay. So we're getting low on time here. I'm just checking to see if
any final last questions from the audience? Someone asked if it will be recorded.
Right.
And it will, and it's going to be a podcast as well, I think, and there's going to be an email going out about that. So, yeah.
So there's a question here that says, I'd like to use FME Server for web services on an as-needed basis. Author desired transformations using FME Desktop, then make them available as OGC or ArcGIS REST services to clients that don't have a desktop. And I'd also like to support indexed DB reading and writing. What do you got to say about that?
I guess that's an FME Server question, really. You'd offer a workspace in FME Desktop that read from ArcGIS. Publish it up to FME Cloud or just normal FME Server. FME Cloud is FME Server, it's just we manage it for you. And then you can turn that workflow into a service that people can interact with. What was that database?
Oh, it's just IndexedDB. So no.
Do we support that? We do, I think, don't we?
I'm not sure what IndexedDB is, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Whatever database you want, if it's supported by FME, we support more, and with 2016, there's more all the time. Basically, JDBC or through JDBC or PostGIS or any database. On the OGC front for 2016, we have new approaches for WMS, WFS, which we've been working with some partners on. And so if you have a requirement to share your data via OGC web services, then for sure reach out to us and we can show you. It's now, the nice thing is now it's a completely workspace-driven approach, and so you can support filters, all sorts of great things within the workspace, and it's of course it's scalable. So that's the exciting thing there. So another question here. Let's see. I'd like to create ETL processes between Socrata Portable and SQL Server 2012.
Okay, so Socrata. We have a reader for Socrata and a writer. So that's not a problem. SQL Server, we don't currently support an FME Cloud for full support because it's not supported on Linux, but you can read and write from SQL Server via JDBC, but just not spatial. So It depends how complicated you go there, but it's very easy to do with Server. And again, you build the workflow all through in the desktop tool, and you can create a service out of it on FME Server.
That's right. And Socrata is one of the open data solutions that we're seeing being deployed across, North America for sure, and I'm sure there's other examples as well. So basically the nice thing about FME Cloud is any API you can support it. And Stuart also mentioned Amazon with their API gateway. Yeah. You've built some APIs on top of.
Yeah, and there'll be more of that to come next year because if let's say you have a database, an old legacy database, and you want to give access to that database to developers. Yeah. The perfect scenario is to wrap an API around it. Yeah. And with an API gateway and FME Cloud, you can do that in 20 minutes, half an hour, an hour. Yeah. You don't have to write any code. Yeah. So we'll be talking a lot more about that next year in blogs and webinars and things like that.
Great. Now, have you written blogs on the API gateway?
We did a brief one, but there's a big blog post series I've been writing, so expect that in the new year. Okay. It's a 3-parter.
Okay. Okay, so I think it's time we wrapped up. So any closing words, Stuart?
I mean, I just loop back to the start. Because the barriers of entry are so low, both in terms of cost and this free trial, just get in there. Don't be scared to give things a go. Yeah. Set up your billing alert like Claude says, so you never spend any money, and then just launch stuff and click, and that's how you learn, isn't it, Claude? Yes, you played around, you dug, and the docs are good. Yeah. There's just a lot of them, but just persevere. The information will be there. Yeah. It's just it's overwhelming. So just get stuck in.
Yeah. And if I'm doing with FME Cloud and I have questions, like how do I get those answered?
So we have a new community, which is fantastic. You can post there on knowledge.safe.com. Yeah. But of course, support@safe.com. You can email in. Yeah. Or live chat on our website. Yeah. So Claude and I are sat. Maybe not the first tier, but we are there, and we'll get those eventually. Yeah.
So the live chat's something the community we just launched that a month ago, and the new community is fantastic. So if you haven't been there in the last 6 months or if you haven't been there in the last 2 months, then really you've never been there. It's that different. Yeah. And it's just being pulled up there so you can see it. There's ideas there. There's community answers, so if we click on the community answers there, you'll see it. And you can see on the top you can ask questions, you can view our articles that most have been reworked. You can vote on ideas, you can vote on answers to questions, you can comment on articles. So it's just a fantastic way to interact with the whole community of FME users, as well as us. And you'll see in the bottom right there on every page in FME, you click We're Online, so let's type a message there saying, hi, how are you today? And you'll see that there's somebody there. This is, of course, completely unscripted. Hopefully there's somebody. No, there's somebody there. If there's, if it says we're online, then we are online. Otherwise, it'll say leave us a message because, of course, we're in Vancouver. And we've just rolled this out. And the important thing is you have access through both of those mechanisms, full knowledge at SAFE. So like Stuart said, he and Claude are available via live chat. And the person, when the question comes in, can pull them in, as well as our entire amazing team of FME technical gurus at SAFE. So we have this whole team of gurus. And they're just here to help you. So they scan this board, they write articles with our knowledge base team, and so we're really here to help. So any last words, Claude? No. Claude's excited. He started on cloud right from the start. So, and it's been a lot of fun. For me, the cloud is hugely exciting. We're seeing more and more uptake all the time. It's growing like gangbusters. Many people use it for prototyping even of things they have to deploy, but certainly there's no doubt that the cloud is the future.
Claude's living proof you can learn because he said, okay, you're going to do AWS. He said, what's that? Yeah. And 3 years later, he's at meetup groups presenting to 50 people. He's he's an expert. So it's possible.
Yeah, and it also is a heck of a lot of fun. So
Yes, it is.
so it's exciting. It's a lot of fun. So so with that, I want to thank everybody who tuned in, and just thank you for spending the morning with us.
Yeah.
As Stuart mentioned, this will be recorded.
Yeah.
This is recorded, and it will be present on our website.
Yeah.
And so you know, so yeah, so try the cloud. Have any questions? We're here to help, and yeah. So and thank you guys for getting up early to do this morning. So it's good. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.